Okay, so the title is Special Gift of Two Paths, Indigenous and Christian. And then just gives you a picture of my two paths and how I walk. Okay, next screen. Okay, so the Rosella Kinoshameg, Dishnikas, Nandwekwe, Dishnikango, Udawa, Ujibwekwe, Beneshin, Dodem, Akondanadmak, Doganing, Wikwem Kong, the Domina Sing, Donjaba, Kinag, then Mikonim, Bojo, Ani. Okay, I just wanted to begin with listen to my teaching. So the screen before this one. This is all about listening. It's taken from the reading of Psalm 78. Listen, my people, to my teaching and pay attention to what I say. I'm going to use wise sayings and explain mysteries from the past, things we have heard and known, things that our fathers told us. We will not keep them from our children. We will tell the next generation about the Lord's power and his great deeds and the wonderful things he has done. He instructed our ancestors to teach his laws to their children, so that the next generation might learn them and in turn should tell their children. Okay, next. Just a quick story of the one before this, Daryl. Parable of the birds. The Creator called all the birds together because he wanted to share teaching with them. So he called all the birds. So the birds, some birds came, others were a little bit late. Others had said, oh, I'm too busy. I've got this to do. I have to go here. I have to go there. Anyways, so the Creator began to tell them the instructions. And so some left. They didn't stay. The ones who left the earliest were the crows. And the ones who stayed right to the end were the hummingbirds. And so if you look at their nest today, because this is what the Creator was telling them how to build their nest. If you look at the crow's nest, it's just haphazard of sticks put together. And when the wind and rain come, they all fall down. But you see, if you ever see the nest of the hummingbird, they're perfectly round. And so the important is to listen. And we do have that responsibility to listen. And we're all given a gift and a purpose in life. And if we lose that purpose, we go astray and do not follow it. And if we don't follow instructions, we become unbalanced and things do not go right. So with the crows and the hummingbirds, they give us that, what happens if you don't listen. And then the elders tell us it takes 7 generations to right the wrongs. Okay, next. And before I get really far into the presentation, I do have a right to do what I do. And I just want to let you know that. We have a 2-row wampum belt, and just at the end of that, when it talks about the wampum belt, as we travel the road of life, because we have different ways and different concepts, we shall not pass laws governing the other. We shall not pass laws telling you what to do. You shall not pass a law telling me and my people what to do. We have the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and the calls to action. And if we pay attention to number 24, 27, 57, and 60, they all talk about having some kind of a course that gives Indigenous teachings and practices, and the need to respect Indigenous spirituality. In the United Nations Declaration of Rights and Indigenous Peoples, especially Article 12.1, we have the right to manifest, practice, develop, and teach spiritual and religious traditions, customs, and ceremonies. And Pope Francis in 2022, he said, in all these that wounded you, and the abuses you suffered, and the lack of respect shown for your identity, your culture, and even your spiritual values, all these things are contrary to the gospel of Jesus Christ. So that's why I have my right to say what I'm going to tell you. So in this presentation, I'm going to share and reflect on my experiences of my spiritual journey in walking the 2 paths, Indigenous and Christian. I'll just talk a little bit about my childhood, a little bit about school, about motherhood, nursing, the influential people in my life, and the wisdom that I learned, and my hope. Next. So I was a gift from the Creator. Every child is a gift from the Creator, sacred, precious, and special. Next. In my childhood, I was born January 19. I'm not going to tell you the year. And I was baptized a month later, February 18th, because the priest only came once a month to our community. And I received First Communion at residential school. I remember getting confirmation, but I don't remember where. And I took the name of Saint Genevieve. I'm the youngest of 10 children, and one died before me. And my mother adopted 2 more children. They were always my sisters. And I waited until my younger sister turned 6 so that we could go together to residential school, and we were there for 4 years. And all my sisters and brothers, except one, the oldest one, went to residential school, and the one that was not accepted was blind in one eye, so he was not accepted. So he had to be homeschooled by my mother with her grade 3 education. And then, of course, we all talk about the residential school effects, the trauma that are generational and intergenerational. And I'm not going to go into that topic at all because that's another whole topic in itself. We grew up living the traditional teachings in our daily life. We were shown how, taught by action, not so much by word. We followed the 7 grandfather teachings, not by name, because my father did not tell us the names of these things, but we just lived that way. And later on, I learned that this was respect, humility, honesty, bravery, truth, wisdom, and unconditional love. But he gave me a firm foundation and the ability to cope by living this way of life. And even though I had questioned, because I was reading and hearing about Indigenous people losing their identity. So I did a little research and I said, no, I didn't lose my identity. So we lived both ways, and that was very natural for me. We had our Catholic prayers in Ojibwe at bedtime, and during the wakes, my father was the leader, and he did all the prayers in the language. And he took us to church, and we went by horses and wagon, or we traveled by boat or by truck. And my father provided the example of good living. He was a spiritual leader with regard to both traditions. He was a church organist, and he was the organist for over 50 years. And they held ceremonies in our home. His strong faith had a great role in building my personal faith because he provided that foundation and preparation that I needed to do my earth walk. But I learned as I was growing up that not everyone was brought up this way. We were sheltered by where we lived and how we lived. If you want to say, we lived out in the country where the houses were hard, so we didn't have any close neighbors. But our house became a home of refuge for some people. And in growing up, we listened to many stories, and we observed many practices, such as offering of tobacco at times of thunderstorms, and when we were traveling out on the water, or picking berries and that. And we observed smudging. And this tobacco teaching was reinforced by an elder who was 92. Those were the days when the elders didn't talk too much about our traditions, and I had told her something because she had asked me, and then she told me about the tobacco teaching. Amen. So I went to the Spanish Ontario, the girls' residential school for grades 1 to 4. We came home after when there was a school bus, and then we went to school just about 5 kilometers from here for 5 to 7. And then we moved into the main village for 8 to 10 because we had grade 10 then. And then after grade 10, we moved to North Bay at St. Joseph's Girls College for 11 to 13. And then I applied to schools of nursing, and I was accepted at both, one in Sudbury and in North Bay. But Sudbury was closer, so I took that one, and I went there from 65 to 68. I missed out on the chemistry. And so when we moved to Windsor, when my husband went to university there, I went to night school, and I took my grade 13 chemistry. Then I went to University of Ottawa in 74 to 77. And after that, I became a St. John Ambulance and CPR instructor. I took the diabetes education and care through Cambrian College because it was important to have that because of the number of people who had diabetes in our community. And then I got involved with the Basic Ministries Program, the National Spiritual Center. Then I also got involved with the Indigenous Pastoral Leadership Formation at St. Paul University with the St. Catherine Native Ministry in Ottawa. And then because of all the suffering that I was noticing in the community, then I took this Healing the Healer course on spiritual suffering, and that has helped me. Okay, next. So this is just to show you the pictures that are a class picture when we went to residential school. There's my sister there, Barbara, it says. And then this is a school. It looks awfully big, but it was so small, you know. I don't know how come it looks big. Next. And these were the pictures of Rosella, who graduated from nursing school at Marymount in Sudbury, and then the University of Ottawa. Okay, my hair used to be black. Now it's white. Okay, so when I was about 16, that was around the time, probably our first powwow here in Wikwemikong. It was called Indian Days or something like that. And we went, we danced at that powwow. And that Sunday, this elder got up and he was saying the prayer in the language on a Sunday. And to hear him say the prayer in the language, it was so beautiful. And I said to myself, oh, I wish I could pray like that someday. Next. So anyway, so I got married. I had 5 children. Now I have 7 grandchildren. I have 5 great-grandchildren. And to me, every child matters. That is really, really true. Because when I had my children, I always wanted to keep them close to me. I didn't want them to go spend the night with, here and there and all over. And so because I was a nurse, I had to teach the community, and starting from birth to end of life. And so I included my traditional teachings in the maternal and child health that I was doing, and to give the breastfeeding teachings. And I did traditional parenting, and even to cover diabetes, I brought in the traditional teachings. And then the last of all was the journey to the spirit world, which is on palliative care, which I still do every now and then. And this was because our way of life, it's like the traditional medicine philosophy. And there was this one Indigenous physician who had given us this definition that was way long time ago. He said that health is the power, the energy to exist in balance of body, mind, and spirit, and to function in harmony with the environment and with other people. And I found that to be very true. Okay, next. So I said I had become involved with the church, and when I first came home, the community elders made me president of Parish Council to take care of the church, do all the fundraising. And then I said, there's more to the church than fundraising. I said, I'm very concerned about the spiritual life of the community. And I was involved in the music ministry because at age 12, my father had been teaching us how to play the organ. And so at age 12 was the first time I played the organ. We're always involved in the choir, and because my dad was the organist, and then his sister was she did a lot of the solo singing, and she had a very beautiful voice. As far as the Anishinaabe Spiritual Center, I got involved in there, I think it was early 1980s. And when I was reading about Anishinaabe Spiritual Center, or Wasan the Mekotting, we call it, there was this vision, I guess that belonged to Bishop Alexander Carter. And he said to encourage the Native people to discover their roots and to value their own culture and the beauty of their ceremonies. That was the main purpose of the Anishinaabe Spiritual Center. When I saw that, I said, wow, he must have had great vision, And so I became a reader, and I was very, very nervous the very first time I did the reading, and because I guess I never did that before, get up in front. And I never wanted to get up in front of people and talk. And then I became a Eucharistic minister. And then we were involved in a project that was in the 1990s of making hide vestments for the church. And our little group was called the Spirit Creations, where we worked on the symbols and the colors. And I did most of the teachings to the people so that they would know what colors to use and in what direction. Okay, next. So this is one of the vestments that we had made. And this is worn by Bishop Jean-Louis Plouffe, who had come to our church in Doganing when we celebrated our 100-year celebrations. So you can see the hide vestment and the little beadwork that's in the center. Okay, next. And this is just my sisters, and we're the last of the pheasant choir. Okay, next. In 1996, I was honored with an honorary doctorate of sacred letters from Regis College, University of Toronto. And my nephew said to me, Auntie, you are making it difficult for us. I said, no, I'm not making it difficult. I look at this as only opening doors for others. Okay, next. And so these are all my sisters. They were all alive when I received the honorary doctorate. There's only one alive now. My brother, two of my brothers, I think had already 96. No, one brother had died, and one couldn't make it, and one didn't make it to the picture. I don't know where he disappeared to. Okay, next. So other church involvements. I was mandated as diocesan order of service in the year 2000. And now what I do is I teach Eucharistic ministers. I teach about smudging. I do the wake ministers. I teach them. Now I become involved, and I allow others to become involved. Very engaged with Indigenous spirituality, and I've been teaching Ojibwe hymns because there is nobody to carry on that tradition now. So I don't know where that's going to end up in. In 1999 to 2014, I was asked to be part of the Catholic Aboriginal Council. That was through the CCCB. And I was supposed to get off, I think 2 years before this, 2014, but the bishop says, no, you stay on. And the next year I said, I have to get off now. No, you stay on. So I stayed on for 2 years extra on that council. In 2016, we did a solidarity trip to Chiapas, Mexico, to learn about the bishop there, Riaz, I think it was Riaz, that was his name, how he worked with the people in those communities, and how he had many deacons out of his program. And then I became involved with Guadalupe Circle, Canadian Council of Catholic Bishops again, to November. And I think I'm going to be still on now till May. I was involved in the preparatory work for the delegation that went to Rome, and also for the papal visit when the Pope came. Worked on prayers and those kinds of things, and not a novena, but the prayers of the faithful was most the one I had done. I was invited to go to the Cardinal's dinner 2 years ago, a journey towards healing it was called, and I was very impressed with that, but that was by Zoom, that was not in person. Then I became the Indigenous Reconciliation Fund chair, which I still am right now, and we went to Washington, D.C. for the Indigenous Conference of Catholic Indigenous. That was in September 2018, no, 2023, 18th to the 22nd. And I'm involved with the Indigenous Catholic leaders, the National Indigenous Rosary, which we had a few weeks ago. And there's another one coming up, I think, on the 25th of November and December 9th, I think, where we try to have Indigenous people lead 1 decade of the Rosary in their language. So if you know of anyone that can do it, get in touch with Father Daryl, who can get in touch with me. And now I'm enrolled in a course, Windows on Theology. It's a Psalms course, once a month till May. Next, I have to hurry here. This is just a picture to show the year 2000 we were when we were mandated DOS, and there's a little story that was written in a book for the Missions Canada or something like that. Okay, next one. And this is just a DOS, and when another DOS is mandated, we all are invited to attend, and we pray over the person that's being mandated. Next. So First Communion, confirmation. We did one naming ceremony as part of the baptism. I've been involved in the marriage preparation courses. I've done prayers in the language and their translations. I developed the Advent wreath prayer. I have set up Wake for Jesus after the Good Friday service, blessing us of the sacred medicines for Holy Thursday, and Easter Sunday sunrise ceremony. That's the only time I do a sunrise ceremony is on Easter Sunday. And been involved in reflections at communion services and also at the wakes, and I did one last night. Okay, next. Well, this is just pictures that we did First Communion. That's these two of my grandchildren. In the center, my granddaughter had a baby when she was 16. And then she says, Mama, can you make arrangements for my baby to be baptized? and she hadn't been. So I said, you should be baptized first before your baby. So that's her in the picture here. She received her baptism. She made her first communion and confirmation all on the same day. And then her baby was baptized. Now she's had her third child. This is just a setup for the Wake for Jesus. So you see the four colors coming from the cross, and we have the smudging setup here. And then we have the candles, and people can light a candle and put their donation into the basket. So we have the yellow, red, blue, and white candles in the four directions. Okay, next slide. When we went to Mexico, we went to a Mayan ceremony, and that was very good. You know, I really enjoyed that. And then we did another one in Winnipeg. That was in around 2017, I think, or about that 2018. Okay, next. So October 2015, I was invited by Bishop Jean-Louis Plouffe to attend a celebration to give thanks at Saint Jean de Brébeuf Church in Sudbury to receive an award. And it was Pro Ecclesia et Pontifice for the Church and Pope Medal, also known as Cross of Honor, an award conferred by the Pope to the laity for distinguished service to the Church. Next. These are just a list of awards that I got. A Magus Award in April of 2023 to praise, reverence, and serve Christ our Lord. Leads you closer to Jesus. And the real priority in our life is God. God comes first. Okay, next. This is an honorary volunteer that I received in August in 2023. That was through the Holy Rosary Parish in Guelph, and that was for friendship, faith, love of God's people, and seeking to build a bridge of friendship and reconciliation between the Odawa Ojibwe Nation and the Holy Rosary Parish in Guelph, and the Holy Cross Mission, and the Immaculate Conception Church in Chiging. So, and a generous service to others. And throughout all this, okay, there's been struggles. I'm checking my time here. There have been struggles, but anyways, that's okay. Initially, there was unacceptance of the symbols because of the colonization, and we were told, you cannot believe this is wrong, this is sinful, you'll go to hell, and all this, eh? So a lot of people still had that in their mind, eh? And we had Stations of the Cross that were done by an Indigenous painter, and we had a flag about those two. But anyways, they got up on the wall. We still have the feather, we still have the medicines and the colors. And one elder didn't want smudging, and another didn't want the Stations of the Cross. But anyways, we overcame all those. The request was made for removal of the symbols in the church. That was not so. That didn't happen. And the response that our deacon gave was, if you practiced any of the seven grandfathers, even if you just practiced respect, you wouldn't be talking to us like this. That was his response. And I've been told no Christian service at the wakes. But anyways, then I got invited to do the prayer. When I went, I was going to do a healing workshop. And on the way, I heard about the residential school, the demolishing of the site that was going to happen. So I said, okay, let's stop there. So we stopped, and everything was down on the ground except for the steps and the door frame and the door that was closed. I said, I wonder why they left that. And then I went to the workshop, and then we were talking about this healing. And I said, okay, you go up those stairs, you open the door, open it wide. The school is not there. You have all this vastness and a great opportunity of all possibilities, and look at the future. I said, we have opened that door. Next. And so we hope not to carry into the future all the resentments, the bitterness and anger, but we try and turn this to acceptance and to letting go. Not to carry resignation, that I give up attitude, but turn it to ambition. Not to carry being a victim, saying, look what they're doing to me, to being responsible. And not to carry being cynical or putting down, but turn this to inspiration. And this is all I learned from Return to Spirit workshop. So the great influences in my life have been my parents, my mother and my father, my grandmother, and he said, Brother John Haskell, but we call him Father John Haskell, Capuchin. He was an Ojibwe medicine man, and he would offer mass. He'd have a blanket on the floor, and he would use his feather and use the language. And I was so impressed by all that. And I had a chance to meet him. Great opportunity. Next. So the greatest wisdom teachings, I guess, were the 7 grandfather teachings, or the 7 sacred teachings that we talked about: the respect, humility, compassion, most of all, and the responsibility to do to the best of my ability, and making a choice, like self-discipline, setting goals, and to be all that I can be, because I want to be a nurse. So I aimed at being that nurse, setting my goals. How am I going to get there? And then the choice. That was the hardest and the last teaching that my father taught me. And that was when I chose to go to the school of nursing that I took. And then he died in 1973. And this time I was so afraid of people dying and death, and I guess those stories came from residential school. But when he died, all that fear was taken away. And that helps me today when I work with the dying. And besides, my grandmother was a midwife, so who worked with life at the beginning of life and bringing life into the world, helping the moms and that. And then now I assist my grandmother when I assist the dying on their journey to the spirit world. Next. So all that I learned, I cherish that. We call that Nibwakawin, or wisdom. And we use it in turn to help other people. And we have other stories that, that we call Nanabush stories. And Nanabush was not a trickster in the sense of being malicious, but rather he played that role of a teacher, demonstrating the good and evil and helping people to make choices. And choices give people to discern and to grow from the experience.
Ain't clear feeling that well.
Okay, next. So also the wisdom teachings bring balance to our life, the spirit, heart, mind, and body as a way of life. If we look at the medicine wheel and live those teachings of the medicine wheel that give us direction and strength, we accept those responsibility, do as we ought to the best of our ability, and we strive to live in balance and harmony every day. And we use animals, for example, the eagle, one who flies the highest and sees the farthest. And we have the plants that are there for, to enjoy the beauty of creation, to help us when we need the healing and the sacred medicines. And it helps us to discover a pathway for healing. Okay, now I think we're almost to the end. So all this has strengthened and enriched my spiritual life. It leads me to a deeper understanding, appreciation, and respect of the richness of my culture and the traditions. The meaning of symbols greatly enhance the meaning of scriptures. And it's important to focus on the great spirit, one God, our creator, and to keep in mind that we are all children of God, sacred gifts of the creator, and we are the church. Okay, next. Oh, and this is just a list of all the work that I've been involved in with, to do with reconciliation. So I've been working with teachers associations and others. Okay, next. So accept me for who I am. Acknowledge that I am sacred, precious, special, a gift from the Creator. Respect my beliefs, my traditions, my culture, and my language. Respect my tradition. Respect my sacred ceremonies and sacred objects. Respect my spirituality, the key to deeper connection with the Creator. Listen to my old long stories of wisdom and love. L, listen with your eyes, your ears, and your heart. O, overlook the negative. V, voice we use to talk and to communicate. E, the effort to make a commitment to walk together. Let us heal our relationships. Let us open doors of opportunities for future generations. Next. Miigwech, right on time, I think. I hope.
Absolutely. That was amazingly well timed. Thank you. Thank you so much. And now, this is where we turn to questions. And there's a number of questions that are just kind of basic, simple answer stuff. And obviously, a number of the questions are going to be much more reflective. But let's start with a couple of the technical ones that I'm sure you're going to be very surprised by. Why is it called Spanish? What is this Spanish residential school? So I guess we're thinking about the Iberian continent, or maybe, that place next to Portugal. Could you explain
I was
Spanish?
going to. I was going to answer that in the presentation. I know because I've been asked before. It always comes up when I talk about Spanish. Spanish is a place in Ontario along the North Shore, just by Massey, which is east of Espanola, between Sault Ste. Marie and Sudbury, if we want to put it that way. It's a place. It's not Spanish. It's not the language Spanish. It's just the name of a place. There's a history to it, but I don't know. I never checked out the history part of it.
It's just like Perth, Ontario is not Scotland.
Yeah.
Second, a simple question. Could you tell us when, can you clarify when you actually started learning your First Nations language? I think you covered that.
From birth. I never learned to speak English until I was 9 years of age when I went to residential school, and it took me, we were forbidden to speak our language, and so I couldn't talk. It took me a whole year to learn how to say a few words in the English language.
Here's another kind of language question, and it's, could you say more about this? You mentioned the phrase spirit world a couple of times, and a couple of questions have said, when you use the words spirit world, are you meaning heaven? What are you meaning when you say those two words?
Well, where does this great spirit live? In a place you call heaven. Yijigong, Wa Queen is what we say in our language. Wa Queen Yijigong. And I think the English people say heaven. That's the land of the creator. It's the spirit world. That's where we go when we leave this earth. Beautiful place, a beautiful feeling. I've been there.
There's another question related specifically to that, and it deals with palliative care. The question is, could you please say more about walking these two paths of the journey to the spirit world and palliative care? How do these things relate?
Well, as people are dying, we talk about, I suppose, the teachings that we've had. One example I could give is I was asked to go and visit this person who was dying, and she was very angry, very upset. So we talked about all this anger, and I told her all about this road that we follow and where it takes us. And, you know, because I said, this is what the elders tell us. That's what, you know, this is where we're going. Apparently it's a beautiful place. It's a beautiful road. And I, you know, I said, these are the things that we do when someone is dying or when they have died. This is what we do. And so when I did go visit her another time, and she didn't express any anger at that meeting, and she asked me to pray, so I did. And then I think it was a few days later she died. And when in her anger, she said when she died, she didn't want nothing. But then when I got there, they said, okay, yeah, this is what we're going to do because we're waiting for this to happen. And so I was very happy because then, yes, she heard me talk about what we do when someone dies and what our ancestors used to do. And so she had followed and did what I had talked about.
Now, there's three versions of this question on this issue of being in the spirit world. Can you elaborate more on this and of your own experience in a way that is appropriate for you?
Being in the spirit world. Well, when I said I went to the spirit world, to the land of the creator, we were doing meditations, and every day we went somewhere. So one day the facilitator said, today we're going to go to the land of the creator. So we did our usual things, you know, we did our breathing in, breathing out, and through the colors. And then the color white, that's when we took off to go where we're supposed to go. So I went, and I don't know where I went, but anyways, I was in this place, and I call it the presence of the creator. I did not see the creator, but I was in the presence. And it was just that great joy that I experienced all around me, far wide around me. And I don't know how long I was there. And then the facilitator's voice came and said, okay, now you have to come back. I said, no, I don't want to come back. I wanted to stay there. And so, but I had to come back. So I came back and I said, oh, okay. But now today, because I do a lot of the reflections at the wakes, you know, for people to know what kind of a place their loved one who has died, to that place where they're going, I share them that story. Oh, it's a piece of great joy. I said, that's where this person is going to be. I said, where they are right now is enjoying that great peace and joy. So to me, that's my experience.
Thank you. Here's another question asking for help, actually, I think. It seems, asks the questioner, it seems that much of your journey is about open doors, learning, listening, and knowledge. If we don't have a lot of interaction with Indigenous people, how should we begin our journey or reconciliation? Where can we find those open doors?
I suppose just meeting with people that you know that are Indigenous, just starting small conversation. You don't have to get into deep conversation the first time. You have to build up that trust, because nobody's going to be sharing something. Because if you have to be kind of like be a friend before they'll start sharing. And I know, but I do share now, and I don't know most of you that are online. And if you don't know of anybody that's Indigenous, well, if you go to the Jesuit Forum, the website, they have listening to Indigenous voices. And sometimes they have sessions where you can sign up and you go into a session and you discuss what's in that chapter. And then you share with a small group, maybe 3 or 4 people, and you go through those questions to answer that. I think we have a group starting here locally, and I think this Wednesday they're going to cover, I think the third session on killing the Indian child within. And that's just what happened at residential school, like, because you're forbidden to speak your language, you're separated from your older sisters if they are in the same school, because we were, in that room, and there was like an invisible wall down the center. And my 2 older sisters went outside. We could never talk to them. We could never go across to talk to them, so separating the families, and cutting your hair and all the things that were done, to make sure that we didn't feel good about who we were, that we were Indigenous, and just those kinds of things. And if you can get into something like that to find out more about those things. And also too, I think I saw something on the chat there, the Kairos blanket exercise. Yeah, I was a facilitator for those Kairos blanket exercises. And there was one section in there that I just couldn't do because it just affected me. And so I'd get somebody else to do that part, so I wouldn't have to deal with that part. But that's the first time I did that was, I think, in 1980. Oh, I don't remember. I don't know, 84 maybe. And I said, when we went through that whole exercise, and I said, this is what our people need to learn, because we were not taught about our own history. And there is so much history that's taking place now to better understand. And I just came from a session and I had to leave it early so I can come and do this presentation. And it was so beautifully done about the history, how we were as Anishinaabe people and how we became colonized and then to go back to now being Anishinaabe. I hope that answered the question.
Well, it certainly gave some very clear pointers, and a lot of the questions are about speak to wanting to know more, to actually open that door that you talked about in your presentation. But here's a question that is about dealing with tensions, I guess. The person says they have a Master's of Divinity and their goal was to become an Anglican priest. And in the process, this person has learned that they are also Micmac. And despite their past connections with the Catholic Church, this person says they are torn between 2 worlds, working with one group, with Kairos, the blanket exercise that you just mentioned, working with Indigenous rights and education. And we're getting to the question now. I still cringe when the bulk of the church is still colonial in nature. How do you, Rosella, how do you cope with this? How do you move forward with this?
I suppose that's what I'm working on presently in all the work that I do. Like you say, something is not going to clear up the whole thing. You just have to work on it step by step. Probably first I was working with our own local parish here, and just by talking, and I had taken that one course theology course, and I had written a story in there, and I had called it the Anishinaabe Gospel of Jesus, and it was quite long, 7-8 pages long. And so the instructor called me and said, "Can you come and see me?" I said, "Well, about your paper." I said, "Oh my goodness, what's going to happen?" So all the way I was thinking there, and I thought, if he asks me something, I know what kind of an answer I'm going to give him. If I answer it this way, this is probably the answer I will get. If I answer it this way, this is probably what he'll say. So anyway, so I was there. And then he said, "Do you believe what you wrote?" I sat there for maybe a minute without saying anything because I was thinking, how am I going to answer this question? Finally, I said, if I didn't believe it, I wouldn't have written it. Okay. So then he calls me the next day. He says, do you think you can condense your paper to 2-3 pages? I said, well, I could. He said, because I want to send it to Rome. I said, well, on one condition, that the Pope doesn't haul me into his office. That was my answer.
That's a very provocative final line. I mean, some of us would hope that the Pope would haul you into his office in the way that he would do it, no doubt, to actually talk to you and listen to you and accompany you. But that's editorial. So I guess the answer, be careful what you wish for. Next question. Can you please tell me something about the Indigenous Healing Fund, and if it has a place, or what kind of place it has alongside the efforts of the Catholic Church for the financial restitution for the suffering caused by the residential school abuses?
The Healing Fund, did you say?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. Well, it has the four areas, I don't have it in front of me here, but it has to do with language and culture, spirituality, language. Because our language, we were forbidden to speak our language. We couldn't use any of our ceremonies or we'd be going to hell. And so people lost their culture. They lost their language. Some people kept it. I kept mine, me and my sister, because we still talk to each other and we use it. But with the fund, the people who are writing the proposals, it's what is most needed in their community or in their organization. Is it language? Have the people lost most of their language? I heard there was one community who only had 8 speakers left. So they're trying to bring back that language. So if that is the language, okay. For me to bring the language into the church, I do it by singing the Indigenous hymns, doing the prayers in the language, because now we do the Our Father in the language. We do the sign of the cross. We do that now. And we do the final blessing. It's in the language. So bringing those little things in, to make use of our language and then promoting that with the, like the Our Lady of Guadalupe circle that I'm on. And now we have that rosary that's going on across the country once a month using various Indigenous languages. The last time, 2 weeks ago, I did one decade in the Ojibwe language, Anishinaabe, and there was somebody else that did it in the Mi'kmaq, and there was another one in the Cree and Squamish. And, so we're trying to get different people to do the language, and that's promoting it, and the more people that know that this is what we're doing, that's helping within the church to bring back our language. And I try and teach the hymns so that people will learn the language that way. And I know there's one physician who was brought up in the city, but he wanted to learn his language. So he went home, and the United Church, I guess, was in their community. And he knew that they were singing in the Indigenous hymns there. So he joined that church to learn the language through the hymns. So those are the small things that are happening.
Rosella, could you tell us if there have been any Christian beliefs that you've found difficult to reconcile with Indigenous spirituality?
Not that I recall. It's my own beliefs, like my own traditions, and I can see where it fits in the scriptures.
Is next question is really an observation and a question. The observation is, you seem to have found the ability of great faith and service by traveling both of these paths. What are your observations of the present Indigenous generation approach to spirituality? Are they seeing both paths as a path to God? I guess that's the question. It's really saying, are you alone or are you in company doing this?
Well, I know there are some people that follow me or walk with me, and I suppose there are some people who are against, but that's up to them. That's up to them. They will find God at the end because we are all children of God.
There's a lot of interest in hearing from you talk about the incorporation of Indigenous spirituality in the conventional ceremony, the Mass and so on. Could you say more about that? What is not enough? What is too much? How might it change? What can you say more about that integration?
Well, I think we're doing as much as we can right now, but there's probably more that we can do. But that'll come. We have to start small because we have to work with our own people first, because people have been so colonized that you can't do these things. And so we have to work with them to say, okay, this is why we used to do this, and this is what it does. So doing those explanations over and over helps the people to understand.
This next question says, well, you know that our community is losing many people to suicide, drugs, and gangs. How can we minister to those who are lost, and how can we minister to them more effectively?
That's a good question, because we have the same problem in my community. We had a service for remembrance just on November 1st, and we've had 60 deaths up until October 31st. Sometimes we have 2 a week, sometimes up to 4 a week. And these are all young people. We lose them to drugs. And when I was in nursing, when I used to teach the young mothers when they were pregnant, give them those traditional teachings to help them, because you have to start somewhere. And I thought, where are we going to start? We have to start with the young people, how to care for yourself, give them those traditional teachings that are going to help them all the way through life. And now what I have done is I've taken a course, 2019, Catechesis of the Good Shepherd, to work with the young people, 3 to 6 year olds, to work with them about giving them the teachings in the church. And I was supposed to start today, but I couldn't start because of the meeting and because of this presentation. So I have to wait till next week to start. Because when I took that course, when I heard about it, I said, boy, this is what we need, for the young people, the 3-year-olds, to start with them really young, because they're still close to the Creator. They still understand about, those spiritual things without having to be told. And I say this because my daughter was 3 years old when my father died. I said, what am I going to say to my daughter to tell her about her grandfather dying? How am I going to explain it so that she understands it? So the wake was at my house. They brought the body. And because she was so small, she was only 3 years old, I brought that chair up to the casket, the opening of the casket, and she stood there. She looked at her grandfather, and then she said, now he can walk. She jumped down from the chair and she went out to play, because her grandfather had had a leg amputation. So she remembered that even before she was 3. And now I didn't have to tell her about her grandfather, tell her about death. She said, now he can walk, so that's a proof for me that children understand, because they're still close to the Creator, and we cannot miss that opportunity to teach from when they're very young, to strengthen that connection to the Creator. Hope that answers that question.
Thank you. Let's stay with young people. There's a question, very simply, young people actually embracing Christianity in First Nations?
Well, I can only speak for my community, and I am surprised at the number of young people who bring their babies to be baptized, and the number of young people that that come to church. They don't come every Sunday, but they do come, and I'm always surprised. There are still young people who come to church, and I take my opportunity, of course, at the wakes, because when a young person dies, the young people come, and I talk about the Creator. I talk about, as an Anishinaabe, how we're given those gifts and how we have to prepare our life so that we are prepared to meet our Creator when it's our time, when we don't know when we're going to be called, because it's the Creator who calls us to come home. So I take that opportunity to speak to the young people, and I know they listen.
This next question takes us back to the Vatican. In a way, many of us have been hearing and seeing reports on the synodal process, the meeting that happened throughout the month of October. And this question actually is about that, and its links to what we've been talking about today. The question is, how do you compare Indigenous spirituality with this synodal path, or this journeying together, that Pope Francis has put front and center for the church?
The walking together?
It's the journeying, the walking together,
Well,
taking the path together.
that's what that means. It's walking together. And what did I say in the first slide? We have that 2-row wampum belt. The one road is a sailboat of the European people. The other one is the canoe of the Indigenous people. So we travel down this road, or down this river, water. That's a road of life. As we travel the road of life, because we have different ways and different concepts, we shall not pass laws governing the other. We shall not pass laws telling you what to do. You shall not pass a law telling me and my people what to do. So we travel together, side by side. But if you look at that, I was thinking about this. If you look at that wampum belt, you have the white beads on along the side. You have the purple beads to symbolize that one road and the other one. And in the middle, there's white beads, and they all symbolize something. So we travel together. But if you're looking at those beads, there is something connecting those beads, because you cannot just have one row of beads singly. They're all connected crossways so that they all stay together. So I was thinking, what is that holds us together? And it's that connection to the Creator. That's what that is. Because we all come from the same God. We're all children of God. That's our connection.
What were your thoughts about the recent papal visit here to Canada?
Recent visit? Oh, I can't even hear you now.
Rosella, he was asking about the visit of Pope Francis to Canada a little over a year ago. What were your impressions, or what were your takeaways? Something like that.
I went to Edmonton. I was fortunate to go to Edmonton. We were there the day, 2 days before, really, I guess. We went to Sacred Heart before the Pope got there. We went to Masquachis, the Indigenous community, where he spoke to the people. And I think that was the best day of his whole visit, for me anyways, because we were all there, except for my group, we didn't have the right colored lanyards. So we couldn't sit in the center. So we had to sit on the outside. I said, well, okay, sometimes you have to be at the margins, And they had the drums, they had the singing, the chants, they had a grand entry of the dancers, and you could hear those drums, and that drum, drum is when they hit that drum, that sends the beat down to the earth, and it bounces there and it goes up to the Creator. The heartbeat of Mother Earth, they call that the drum beat. I was so pleased with all that, and the number of Indigenous people that were there. I was so happy to see all those people and to watch that Pope being wheeled in by the wheelchair. And I said, oh, you have to be so humble to be wheeled in by a wheelchair. Because I know when you're healthy and you want to do things for yourself, to be able to walk by yourself. But when you need help, you accept that help humbly. And that's what he did. He was humbly accepted that, to be wheeled in. And even though he spoke in Spanish, it was translated so that we would know what he was saying, and he apologized. So I'm sorry. And that's what people wanted to hear. I'm sorry for what happened to you, residential school. And when I had asked a question of the when I was on those working groups, and I said, what about the Pope visiting his fellow Jesuits? And the answer I got was, he's here for Indigenous people. Okay. So we went to the next day, we went to the, what do you call that, stadium. And I was expecting, because if it was for Indigenous people, I was expecting more Indigenous ceremonies and things like that. When we got into that stadium, there's a little table on the way in where you could smudge yourself. I said, well, that's strange. But anyways, we all smudged, walked in. But to climb these stairs, to climb down, that's what it was. We climbed down to the 4th row from the bottom. That's where we sat. And they had entertainment, I guess, before the mass started. They had some drummers, okay? That was the only place where they had the drummers in their entertainment part. And then the mass started, and it was in Latin. I said, why in Latin? So that's the only part I didn't like, was the Latin. And at the end of the mass, they had the final recessional song. One verse was in the Cree language, and it was not Cree people that were singing it. But all his homilies, I followed all his homilies everywhere he went. Sacred Heart, to the stadium, to, I even forget that place there, where they have that lake, and it all flooded this year, so they couldn't do their pilgrimage.
Lac Sainte Anne.
Lac Sainte Anne, yes, that's what it was. I followed there, and then when he went to in Quebec and Nunavut, I followed all those homilies that he gave. And the most important thing, I think, was what he said in all of those. And I was so, like he addressed the young people, the elders, I said, treasure your elders. Don't cast them aside because they're no longer useful. He talked to the young people, learn your language. Do away with those cell phones, Yeah, and there was one where he spoke to the clergy, I guess, and I thought, okay. He said, make Jesus known. A new way of doing evangelization. And there were many more things that he shared. If you're that interested, read all those homilies and you decide for yourself what you want out of there. I only went to Edmonton. That's the only place where I went, but I did follow all those other sessions where he spoke,
Well, may I ask you, as a treasured elder, 2 very quick questions just to finish us off. One is a bit more open, one is more precise. The open one is, when we use the label Indigenous, we sometimes think of it as kind of meaning one thing, that it's one group and it's kind of all the same. Can you tell us about diversity and inclusion and difference within the Indigenous community? That clearly this is not one uniform group, in the same way that we can't say Catholics are.
It's like that saying, one size fits all. There's different sizes, because we are many, many, many nations across the country. We have many, many different languages. And you talk about, Indigenous, that's what I think. First they called us Indians, and then they called us First Nations, and then they called us Indigenous. But today, in that presentation I went to, we were always Anishinaabe, and we are Anishinaabe today. It's who you are, Indigenous to me is, when you say Indigenous, you're talking about First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. So I don't think we can all lump them all together, First Nations refers to, in my area, we are 3 nations here: the Ojibwe, the Odawa, and the Potawatomi. I almost want to say Potawatomi because that's the way we say it in our language, Potawatomi. So now there's 3 different languages, not quite different, but we can understand each other. And we probably use the same word now and then, but maybe we come up with 2 words for the same thing, because we learn how to say one word, just like when I went to school, and we're playing with these children. And so they said this one word. And so I came home and I said to my father, I said, so this is what one child said today. Oh, he just laughed. He says, that's Potawatomi language, So he knew exactly where that word was coming from. So that's who we are. I'm Ojibwe Odawa.
Thank you. I am now going to not ask the other final question, because the time is running away from us. So I now like to turn to Father Gerald Winkler to conclude today's session.
Thank you. Thanks, Kevin. Thank you. Thanks so much, Rosella. Now, I've known you for 30 years, so when you talk, I'm already filling in the cracks. I know I've known you for a long time, but I learned a lot from what you said today. For instance, what really moved me was I did not get to see, when the Pope was here, him in the wheelchair. And you talked about the humility that he exhibited by doing that. And that was something I hadn't thought of. I don't know why, but when you said it, it really moved me. Secondly, I talk about the spirit world all the time to my parishioners. They're not Indigenous. I just assumed everybody knew what spirit world is. So often I talk about it in funerals. I said, well, she's going through the western door into the spirit world. And I guess they have no clue, or they don't know. Maybe they get what I'm saying. I'm not sure. I just wanted to let people know, if you joined late, or if you didn't, or whatever, you couldn't see the full thing. This is being recorded, and it's going to be on our YouTube channel. So but that'll appear in about a week's time on the Parish, St. Basil's Parish YouTube channel. Finally, Rosella, just another observation was, throughout your talk, you talked about listening, like you used love, L-O-V-E. The first is listening. And throughout their talk, you talked about the importance of listening. When the Pope planned the Synod 2 years ago for us, he said, I want us all to learn how to listen to each other. But he said the Indigenous peoples all over the world, they already know how to listen. They know what it is. So for them, it's going to be a refresher's course. But for the rest of the church, we need to learn how to listen. And he says, right now we're in a terrible state in the Middle East and Ukraine. We have to learn how to listen to each other, or we're going to destroy each other. It's a great and terrible catastrophe what's going on in the Middle East. And if we don't listen to each other, we just throw bombs at each other, it will be annihilation for the people of Gaza and everywhere. So I think listening, and I'm going to end with this. I heard a prophecy. I don't know, Rosella, if you've heard of it, but there was a native man who said, in time, the white people are going to come to us because they'll need to learn how to live. And they'll come to us, and then we'll have to show them. But in the meanwhile, there's going to be lots of havoc, something like that. There was something like this. Anyways, there's so much more that I want to jump in. I wanted to jump in every time, but I thought, BQ, they're here to listen to Rosella. They don't care about you. So I never jumped in. I was really good. I have to pat myself on the back for not interrupting you at all. Anyways, I wanted to show you something. We have a gift for you. Now, my niece sent it to me on Messenger. I don't know how to show it except to do this. It's on my, I don't know if you can see it here. I don't know.
It's a little blurred. Perhaps you should describe it.
Blurred. Okay, so it's a bear paw, and it's a medallion, first of all, and it's on a leather string, and it's a beaded medallion, and the colors are, let me see, where can I think I can do this. No, I don't know how to do it. Anyways, I cannot show, I have the image. Anyway, let me tell you this. It's beautiful. It's a bear claw, and it's done in orange, yellow, golden colors. And the reason I like this bear claw, because you said makwa, that's your spirit helper, something like that. It's not your dodem. It's not your, what do you call it, clan, but it is a spirit help. And the bear, for Ojibwe people, the bear is a very spiritual animal. It taught the Anishinaabe how to pray, because in the wintertime, it goes inside for its own retreat, and it's praying, and then it comes out in the spring. And it's been on retreat the whole winter. And we've learned how to do retreats ourselves, Anishinaabe, based on the prayer style of the bears. Okay, I think this is it. I'm not sure what else to say, but except to say that I really thoroughly enjoyed your talk, Rosella, your presentation. And I wish we could spend more time together, but anyways, there you have it. So one final thing is, I think it's when is it, Kevin? In January, our next Zoom presentation, our next Conversations for Our Time.
Yes.
It's in
It is in January, and it is on the subject of loneliness.
So that's what, and we'll keep you informed then.
Yes.
Okay, so thank you all for coming. Rosella, big thanks. Chimigwech. And thank you for all your teachings today. And goodbye to everyone. Have a beautiful rest of the day.